Imagine a tomb so ancient that the very earth has forgotten its whereabouts. A sepulchre wrapped in eternal silence, hidden beneath deserts where time dares not tread. There are no records on scrolls, nor markings on maps. Only a whisper in the shadows of oral traditions passed down with fear and superstition. A warning murmured by mad priests who never dared speak names. They say that beneath the sands of a land forgotten by both empire and clergy lies something that should never have been interred. Not out of respect for the dead, but out of dread for the living. There, sealed by rites from an age before writing, rests the eternal sepulchre, and before it, in perpetual vigil, stands a being that belongs neither to this world nor the next. The Guardian, a faceless, nameless entity whose eyes never close. Created not to protect a treasure, but to contain a curse. According to ancient legend, the Guardian serves neither good nor evil. It is the very balance enforced by force upon that which threatens to shatter the fragile boundary between reality and nightmare. Mad monks, deserting soldiers, and greedy explorers vanished in their attempts to locate this tomb, and whenever anyone draws too near to the truth, signs appear, dreams shared by strangers, statues weeping blood, bones sprouting from once fertile soil, a subtle yet cruel warning, a reminder that some things must remain forgotten. Today, you will be led through veils of ancestral dust where the past and the supernatural intertwine. But beware, when you gaze into the abyss of the eternal sepulchre, the Guardian may well gaze back. Long before the rise of known empires, even before the first walled cities of Sumer, there were nomadic tribes who followed the winds, guided not by benevolent gods, but by entities demanding silence, sacrifice, and oblivion. One such tribe, whose name has since been lost to time, believed there were places on earth where the veil between the realm of the living and the abyss of darkness was thinner, more fragile, more prone to tearing. These places were not sacred, they were shunned. Cursed lands where, according to their shamans, echoes of voices that never lived could be heard on moonless nights. One such site lay at the foot of a rock formation in the heart of an unnamed desert. There, they said, a body was buried, or rather imprisoned, within a chamber made not of stone, but of a black metal that reflected no light. Whether the occupant was human, beast, or something else remains unknown. Only that something there was sealed out of fear, not honor. The ancients left no inscriptions. They knew even symbols could summon. Yet there are indirect records, passed from culture to culture, speaking of a slumber that must be watched. The Babylonians told similar tales on fragmentary tablets, mentioning a servant of the abyss that must never be awakened. In pre-dynastic Egypt, pictograms depict human figures lying prone, encircled by hooded sentinels with eyes as black as oblivion. Ancient Greeks spoke of the Telchines, demonic artisans from the island of Rhodes, who forged a sarcophagus that must never be opened. These scattered, distorted versions hint at a common origin, a primordial legend buried beneath layers of ritual fear and censorship. But it was in the manuscript of a 4th century monk from Cappadocia that the tale gained detail, albeit shrouded in madness. The monk, named Alexion, claimed to have dreamt repeatedly of a starless desert where a being of impossible proportions whispered incomprehensible words. In his account, he sketched symbols later identified by scholars as identical to those used by pre-Sumerian tribes to denote portals. Alexion maintained that the Guardian predated the gods and was summoned, or perhaps shaped, by a desperate pact of priests seeking to imprison a terror that could not be destroyed. The tomb held no riches, no mortal remains, but something that consumes time, names, and memories. He believed the Guardian never slept, for its watchfulness upheld the sanity of the world. The legend acquired new contours in the Middle Ages. Crusaders crossing Armenia reported ruins resembling giant tombs, their inscriptions erased and architectural elements alien to known styles. A Templar knight supposedly wrote an unsent letter to the Pope describing how one of his companions vanished while probing a pit in the sand, exuding the scent of iron and burnt incense. That night, horses went mad, and 3 soldiers bled from the eyes for no apparent reason. They blamed desert terrors, demons, or mirages. Yet one detail endured, the conviction that in some forgotten corner lay a sepulchre older than faith, older than guilt. And before it, an eternal guardian wrought not of flesh, but of pure intent, to keep the world ignorant of what lay beneath. In more recent times, during the First World War, Turkish soldiers camped in the Anatolian mountains recorded an inexplicable phenomenon in their diaries. While digging trench lines on an isolated plateau, they uncovered black stones arranged in a circle and inscribed with unrecognizable symbols. One soldier went mad and scrawled an unknown language on the walls of their shelter, declaring that the Watcher has woken and the bones of the world tremble. The tale of the Guardian of the Eternal Sepulchre endured as a whisper, but never vanished. It adapted, took on new names in new tongues, yet its core remained. There exists a tomb that does not guard, but contains, and before it stands a presence, whose sole purpose is to ensure that what was sealed never sees daylight again. And if the Guardian still keeps watch after millennia of oblivion, then the entity it protects may be more alive than we dare imagine. The birth of the Guardian was not an act of creation, but of despair. Scattered accounts inscribed on clay tablets, charred parchments, and eroded carvings indicate that the ritual binding this entity to the Eternal Sepulchre was performed by a congregation of men who had lost faith in redemption. They were neither common shamans nor devout priests, but direct witnesses to what lay beneath the earth, and they resolved to sacrifice everything to prevent its awakening. The ritual site was a wasteland. No crops grew there, no animals ventured close. At night, the air grew thick, almost liquid, as though breathing alongside subterranean whispers. It was on this cursed ground that the first circle rose. Black stones carved with bone-tipped tools, laid in non-Euclidean formation, angles that defied the logic of the physical world. At the center lay a shaft hewn into living rock. It wasn't deep, yet it radiated an unnatural chill. There rested the artifact, a sarcophagus of unknown origin, bound by metallic bands that seemed to pulse under the light. The ritual did not aim to banish what dwelled below. That was deemed impossible. Its purpose was to forge an anchor, a consciousness destined to watch, eternally, the borders between the living world and the void of the forgotten. And for that, a sacrifice beyond the body was required, a sacrifice of identity. The chosen one was among the priests themselves. His name was struck from every record, his likeness erased from statues, his lineage ending with him. For 7 nights, he was fed only bitter roots and water tainted with opium and lamb's blood. On the 8th day, his body was anointed with black resin and his soul sealed by guttural chants uttered by discordant voices that never repeated the same sequence. Accounts say he wept not from pain, but from the certainty of what lay ahead, an endless vigil with no sleep, no voice, no death. At the final moment, the priests intoned a forbidden invocation. The words remain untranslatable, mere fragments that induced headaches and nausea in scribes attempting to replicate them. After the chant, the priest was led to the sepulchre's entrance and placed upright before the portal. His eyes were plucked out, and the hollows filled with stones that mirrored darkness itself. His flesh began to harden, not into stone but into something denser, like fossilized wood or living amber. By morning, every priest lay dead save the one who had become the guardian. Since then, the ritual has never been repeated. Its potency exacted too great a price. The guardian answers no prayers, discerns neither invader nor pilgrim. It exists as the will of the tomb incarnate, a consciousness shaped to contain, not to judge. Some occult scholars believe the guardian was not merely bound to the site, but symbiotically linked to what lies beneath. It senses whenever the imprisoned one stirs and acts as a living seal, smothering the threat. Others propose that the guardian is in fact the very being imprisoned, transformed by magic into its own prison, condemned by an ancient guilt to eternal watch. Most disturbing of all is that this entity is not dead. Hunters of relics in the 16th and 17th centuries claimed to see a hooded figure pacing circles around ruins in the Middle East, its feet never touching the ground. Converging reports describe the faint clinking of chains across dry sand and the unnerving sense of being watched by a presence that did not breathe, yet understood all. In 1932, an archaeological expedition led by the Hungarian scholar István Varga uncovered fragments of a fallen obelisk inscribed with an eye that does not close and a mouth that does not scream. Nearby, they found impressions in solid rock, as if something vast and silent had passed moments before. The watching ritual did more than create a sentinel. It imprinted a trauma upon the fabric of the world, a reminder that what lies beneath, the eternal sepulchre, must never be disturbed, and that so long as the guardian endures, the world retains a chance to remain ignorant of what slumbers below. Over the centuries, even the darkest warnings become legends. And legends, however fearsome, stir the curiosity of those who fancy themselves immune to consequence. Thus, the eternal sepulchre, despite its guardian and its mantle of oblivion, fell victim to clandestine digs and human arrogance. The first recorded desecration occurred in the 9th century, when a forgotten emir ordered excavations in a desert near present-day Iraq. He sought relics of power to bolster his dominion. According to fragmentary chronicles by a surviving slave, workers dug 7 days before unearthing a sealed structure etched with indecipherable symbols, all met with dread. On the 8th night, a sudden sandstorm swallowed the entire camp. When reinforcements arrived days later, they found only silence, empty tents, abandoned tools, and no footprints. Not a bone remained, as if all had been drawn into a realm beyond our own. Centuries later, in 1247, a Benedictine monk named Edric of Thorn recorded in his journal a penitential expedition to the east. He wrote of seeking a heart sealed within the earth, where ancient faith lies in agony. His prose veered between religious ecstasy and mounting paranoia. He described a hooded figure that appeared nightly at the edge of the camp, motionless and observing. The final journal entry reads, "I did not pray today. Prayer seems to beckon. The watcher draws near. The sand speaks in my tongue." The diary was discovered buried under stones, bound with human hair, and the monk's body was never found. During the Renaissance, occult fascination reignited interest in the tomb. A secret Venetian cult, the Fratelli dell'Occhio Nero, obsessed with transcending time and liberating the soul, purportedly located the sepulchre and dispatched an investigative party. A member's diary, recently surfaced in a clandestine auction, recounts traversing a hidden passage beneath an ancient temple's ruins. As they crossed the threshold, they heard a collective breathing emanating from the walls. A colossal shadow trailed them, invisible even in the absence of light. One by one, the group vanished. The diary's last line reads, "Darkness is not absence, it is presence, and it hungers." In the 19th century, amid colonial excavations, A French team backed by the Société d'Exploration des Mystères Antiques nearly uncovered the tomb. In his notes, Jean-Louis Ferrat described a partially exposed chamber where compasses faltered and torchlight warped. Ferrat, once a skeptic, wrote, "I feel an eye upon me even when alone." Others began to murmur words unknown to them. One stopped eating, merely listening to the ground. Within days, an inexplicable epidemic swept the camp. The records end abruptly. The mission was declared a failure. None of the purported finds was catalogued. In the 1970s, whispers circulated among Soviet army deserters of a secret dig in Turkmenistan, uncovering a shaft sealed by a black metal plate. When they attempted to bore through, a metallic wail rang out. Those who touched the metal fell ill. 3 days later, the site was sealed, survivors whisked away and all records erased. One soldier, later interviewed under a pseudonym, said, "We opened something, and it woke. It did not kill us. It simply saw us." A pattern emerges in these desecrations. Punishment is neither immediate nor overtly physical. It seeps in like a fog, suffusing the mind. Those daring to approach the tomb succumb to recurring dreams, visions of landscapes that never existed, voices speaking their names despite never having uttered them aloud. Madness arrives first, followed by disappearance of the body, of records, of memory itself. As though the Guardian not only defends the tomb, but erases all trace of those who defied it. Some esoteric scholars argue the Guardian acts not from malice, but necessity. Each breach weakens the seal, and its retribution is in truth a desperate effort to restore balance. It does not hunt intruders out of wrath, but because it must feed the seal with the consciousnesses that draw too near. And the more frequent such attempts, the stronger the presence beneath the tomb, and the fiercer the phenomena. Unanticipated eclipses, collapse of excavations, inexplicable suicides in museums housing stolen relics. Today, few dare seek the eternal sepulchre, not for lack of desire, but because it seems to have vanished. Some insist it moves, the very ground concealing its wound. Others believe the Guardian has shed its stationary post and now walks the world in search of those who would recall what must be forgotten. Hence, many choose to dismiss the legends, for in them are no heroes, only warnings. And warnings like, sepulchres exist for a reason, to prevent the unearthing of evil. It was in 2019 that the first signs re-emerged. On the Syria-Iraq border, a team of independent archaeologists, financed by an eccentric Eastern European millionaire, began an unauthorized dig in a militarily unstable zone. The man, whose identity was never confirmed, was obsessed with impossible artifacts, pieces that fit no known chronology. The team comprised linguists, geologists, and archaic symbolism experts, many already discredited by mainstream academia. The dig site lay in a sandy depression where compasses spun wildly and electronics failed without cause. In the second month, they uncovered a buried structure of dark blocks colder than the surrounding earth. The alloy, a modern unrecorded metal, absorbed light as though it were solid shadow. Carved spirals on the stones induced vertigo in anyone attempting to decipher them. In the third week, an aperture emerged. It exhaled a steady, icy wind, underscored by distant lamentations. One linguist entered with a camera and torch. What he recorded was never released, but the footage ends with the camera toppling and the sound of something dragging across stone. He was never seen again. Thereafter, the group suffered collective sleepwalking episodes. Each night, they awoke standing, in silence, staring at the desert. One, in trance, scribbled in an extinct Proto-Sumerian dialect. The vigil is ended. 3 days later, satellites detected a bizarre geomagnetic storm over the region with no meteorological cause. The excavation was abruptly halted and covered up by local authorities. The millionaire vanished. Whispered accounts came from a sound technician who had worked on a documentary about the expedition. He claimed that reviewing the site recordings, he detected an inaudible, continuous pulse, like a slow heartbeat. In the final audio file, the pulse ceased, followed by a breath belonging to no one present. In the weeks that followed, sightings of a tall, dark-cloaked figure drifted across cities as far-flung as Istanbul, Budapest, Damascus, and Berlin. Always the same description. A silhouette shrouded in deep shadows, stationary and silent. After its appearance, invariably something vanished. An artifact, a page, a person. Skeptics blamed mass hysteria. Yet some occult scholars now propose that the Guardian, roused from its millennial slumber, has left its post. No longer a fixed sentinel, it roams the earth, seeking to reforge broken seals, eliminate those who have seen too much, and ensure the imprisoned consciousness remains entombed. At an unofficial gathering of contemporary occultists in Prague, a fragment of the 2019 chamber was displayed. It trembled on wood and evaporated liquids around it. A participant touching it collapsed into a nervous breakdown, claiming to hear voices speaking of an eye within the world, now ajar. After the event, the fragment vanished. Security cameras recorded only a figure passing through doors unregistered by sensors. Today, the Guardian is no longer merely a desert legend. It is a wandering shadow, a persistent echo of an ancient pact reactivated. It moves among us, perhaps masked in ordinary guise, watching with eyes we cannot see. And where it passes, witnesses forget. Memories dissolve, traces vanish, yet something has changed. If the Guardian has abandoned its tomb, what now lies within? Amid the folds of time's shadows, the eternal sepulchre endures as history's blind spot, a fissure sealed not with bricks, but with silences. Its legend persists as a whisper in reality's wrinkles, a primordial wound kept closed not by walls, but by the watchfulness of a presence beyond human understanding. The Guardian, once motionless, now walks among us, bearing in its empty eyes the reflection of that which should never be beheld. Signs are everywhere. People vanish inexplicably. Manuscripts fade as though consumed by invisible hunger. Museums catalog objects that never existed. And always, underlying it all, the feeling that something is being erased, not by chance, but by necessity. As if the world instinctively shields itself from remembering. What lies beneath the tomb may never have been merely a body. Perhaps it is a concept, a void, a form of consciousness belonging to neither time nor space. And the Guardian, more than jailer, may be the sole barrier between our reality and a truth that would annihilate us. Thus lingers the question, echoing nightmares of occultists, forgotten historians, and restless dreamers. If the Guardian once more walks among us, what prey is about to awaken? Perhaps we shall never know. Or perhaps we already do, but have been taught to forget, and as long as we continue to probe the depths of the unknown, it may be only a matter of time before the seal is broken once again. And when that day comes, there will be no longer a watcher, until our next descent into history's shadows.